Excellent. So welcome everyone. Really appreciate everyone taking a little time out of their day to join us. And if you're in Canada like I am on the Thanksgiving holiday, and to everyone else here, happy Thanksgiving from Canada. I wanted so Danny and I have spent a little bit of time together, well, a lot of time together talking about courses over the last few years. And for those of you who don't know Danny Iny and are more familiar with myself or Thinkific, Danny is someone that I actually look up to and really look to for advice and insights in the online course space and in teaching online and teaching generally. I read his book, Teach and Grow Rich, last year, and just had to reach out to him, the author, and learn a little bit more from him. He, in that book, predicted a whole bunch of things that came to pass later on in the future of online courses. And it wasn't just sort of get lucky predictions of I'm just going to call a few shots and see what happens. He really had analyzed the space. He really understood it. It was really clear he has a lot of expertise in this space. And so he was calling for things that I think for Danny were inevitable and obvious, and for the rest of us were actually kind of a surprise when some of these things came. Things like changing in the prices of how certain courses are priced on different platforms, things like that. And so since then, I've definitely looked up to you, Danny, and looked to you for a lot of advice in the course space. And I couldn't think of anyone more appropriate to come and share knowledge with people who are looking to get into the online course business or grow their business by adding an education piece to it, or even if you're already doing some element of it and you're looking to have greater success with it. Danny really has a lot of insight. And one of the things that I absolutely love about working with you, Danny, is just the way you look at the world is different than many other people in our space. It's really not about any kind of get-rich-quick scheme or the latest hack or fad. It's really about doing things right for now and for the long run, and really building sustainable businesses and building something where we give a lot of value to people. And then on top of that, you actually understand how to get things done and build a real business and a successful business, and it shows with all the amazing success you've had in your business and your online courses. So I don't always gush quite this much in my introductions, but I really do respect Danny a lot, and if you've taken the time to come here, really, I think listen to the things he has to say, because he truly understands this space. He's lived it himself and continues to live it, and continues to educate other people. And in fact, I had an opportunity to go to his live event last year, or earlier. Was it earlier this year or last year? I'm losing track of time now.
It was June. Yeah, it was June.
June, right? Yeah, sorry. It happens when you have kids, but time goes on a different scale. But it was amazing, and it was really amazing to see all the people who were having success, having learned from Danny and from his team. Really, if you're here, you're lucky. Take advantage of that time, and I'm excited even myself to learn from some of the stuff that Danny has to share here today as well, and I'll be participating as well. So welcome everyone, and welcome Danny. Thanks for joining us.
Greg, I'm totally blushing. Thank you. I'm super flattered. Really excited to be here, really excited to be doing this. This is the first really big thing that we're doing for the Mirasee and the Thinkific communities together. It's this 5-day-long boot camp, and it's going to be really cool. This is actually the most in-depth and thorough free training that I will have ever delivered on course building. We're doing it live in real time, and there was a comment earlier in the chat where someone said, oh, you referenced Thanksgiving, so this isn't live. So I'll remind everyone that Thanksgiving is at a different time in Canada, where Greg and I live, than it is in the US. This is in fact happening live. It is Monday, October, I never know the date, but like Monday early in October. This is live, and every day this week I'm going to be teaching for, I don't know exactly how long, because this is all new content, but an hour and a half. Greg is going to be on, adding an enormous amount of brilliance today, on Wednesday, and on Friday. He is incredibly busy and incredibly important, and so on Tuesday and Thursday we will have to fend for ourselves, but I promise that we're going to have a good time. And with that, let's dive in. We're not going to do a whole long preamble. The only thing I do want to say is that this is a different kind of training than probably most webinars or workshops or that sort of thing you've probably attended. It's a lot more raw. It's more vulnerable. It's totally unrehearsed, because you know, it's like 7.5 hours of content, so, you know, when could I possibly have rehearsed it? There just wasn't any other way to do it, and we're going to try to go really deep and talk about some really interesting things about what it takes to successfully build and sell courses, and we're going to go through the entire process. And we can do that. We're not rushed because we have all this time, which is going to be really cool. So the very first thing that I just want to touch on quickly, I think whenever you listen to someone teaching, it's important to know what their motivations are. You know, where are they coming from? So I want to start by talking about why is all this so exciting to me personally? Why am I so big on building and selling online courses? And the answer is that for me, this is, you know, some people see courses as a vehicle for making money. And I see it as something that's much bigger. I see it as a part of the world of education. You know, in the words of Nelson Mandela, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And it's very, very true. You know, there's an artist that I love. His name is Ben Hine. This is an example of his work. And what he does is he takes landscape photos. Then he I don't know if he photoshops it in or he's already holding the piece of paper, you know, when he does it, but he basically has the landscape, and then he holds up this paper and draws what could be this fantastical extension of the landscape. And in this one, he has this quote, which is from Walt Disney, of course: "If you can dream it, you can do it." Such a beautiful, inspiring quote. I actually have a print of this hanging on my wall. And I love it because it inspires so many people to do so much. I also love it because it really shines a magnifying glass on where a lot of entrepreneurs fall down, because as inspiring as these words are, you know, if you can dream it, you can do it. In point of fact, you can't do anything you can dream. There's a massive gap between dreaming and doing. And you bridge that gap with education, right? Online courses are about bridging that gap between what we can dream and what we can do. This is really powerful stuff. And this isn't hypothetical, right? That's why you're all here right now. Everyone who's on this call is here because you want to learn how to do something that you don't yet know how to do, to create an outcome that you aren't yet capable of creating. That's the magic of online courses. That's the magic of online education. That's why it's really exciting to me. Now, why, you know, that's for me. Why is it exciting to you? Why is it exciting to so many people? The answer is, you know, there are, in broad strokes, 3 big reasons why people are interested in building and selling online courses. And I think you'll find yourself in one or several of these answers. And they are impact, to make a difference in the world, to help people who you care about; freedom, to do what you want, when you want, in the way that you want; and wealth, to make money in a way that is not directly tied to the trade of your time and allows you to have that freedom and make that impact. Now, these things mean very different things to different people, right? Impact to some people means being able to work and spend the time you want with your family, with your kids. It means reading to them every night before you put them to bed. To other people, it means being able to donate $1 million to charity. To other people, it means being able to take 4 months out of the year off to do work that you believe in. Impact means different things to different people. Freedom means different things to different people. For some people, it means not having to work in the job that you hate. For other people, it means being able to live the digital nomad lifestyle, traveling the world, which, you know, some people love that. I don't. I think it's much more practical if you don't have kids. But that's exactly the point, right? It means different things to different people. The same is true for wealth. For some people, it means, you know, grossing $10 million over the last few years. That's what my organization has done. For other people, it means making more than you're making right now, doing it in less time. So it means very different things to different people. And it's important to set out on a journey with clarity around what you want to accomplish. So I want to encourage all of you, just take a moment, type into the questions box. Tell me, in whatever terms are meaningful for you, what is the impact, freedom, and wealth that you're working towards? If I teach you how to do what you want to be able to do and it works successfully, a year from now, 3 years from now, what is the impact or freedom or wealth that you will have achieved? Type into the questions box. Just tell me what this means to you. And Janet has written, helping people to live their authentic lives. Quinn is saying, I impact teachers. Sorry, a lot of people are typing. It just flew by. I impact teachers which then impact generations. I love that. For some people, it's about finishing what they start. For some people, it's about financial freedom. For some people, it's about helping others to live well with diabetes. You know, something I'm seeing a lot in the answers you're sharing, this correlates with a lot of industry research that my organization has done. Most course builders who go out there and want to do this, yes, they want to make money, but primarily their motivation is about making a difference in the lives of others. So that's really, really cool to see that echoed in the answers that you guys are sharing. All of these things are possible, and the online course landscape is a really interesting place because it's evolving. It's evolving very quickly, and it's changing. And the ways in which you could, you know, put a quick course together, throw it on Udemy, maybe make a whole bunch of money doing that or something, they don't quite work the way they used to. The online course landscape is evolving, but these goals are absolutely still attainable, just different from the way they used to be. And I want to start this by talking a little bit about how the online courses landscape is changing. There are four big trends, I call them mega trends, that are shaping the landscape of online courses today. And I wrote about this in a blog post I published just a week or so ago. But here are the four big trends, and I'm going to do this just in broad strokes. You can, you know, read the post if you want to go deep on this. The first is that online education is going mainstream. You know, we have to remember that we live in a world, certainly I do, Greg does, where everybody knows about online courses, right? Who doesn't know about online courses? This is what everybody talks about. But we have to remember that in most of the world, if you go to most people, you know, quote unquote, in real life that we might encounter on the street day to day, if you ask them, where can I take a course? They'll tell you at the university, at the community college, at my community center maybe. The idea of taking a course online is just now starting to enter mainstream consciousness thanks to the hard work of companies like Udemy and Coursera and MasterClass and others. It's starting to become in the general awareness of people that online is where I can go to take a course, to get education of some kind. And that's really important because that means that the market size is about to just multiply, grow exponentially. The amount of people who are looking for online courses is about to explode. That's the first big trend. The second big trend is that lifelong education makes for an explosion of demand. You know, go back 20, 30 years, education was something that you did once at the start of your career. You went to elementary school, you went to high school, you went to college, got your degree, got into whatever the job was that you were going to be in, and that's it. Now you are in your career. These days, education never stops. You need it all the time as your career, as your work, as your personal pursuits evolve. And what that means is that you can't expect to take 4 years out of life to go get that next chunk of education. So not only are people looking for education all the time, again, contributing to this explosion of demand, they also want it in bite-sized portions, which is the third trend. The size of an educational experience people are looking for is shrinking. It used to be people wanted a 3 or 4 year program, or more if you go all the way through grad school or something. Now a course is ideally going to be short, a few weeks or maybe a few months on just what people need when they need it. Now these three trends put together make for something really interesting. On the one hand, the demand for education for online courses is growing exponentially because more and more people want it and need it in more and more parts of their life, and the total amount of education they need is being broken down into much smaller pieces. So the absolute number of courses that people want to consume is just growing up exponentially. And that's great news for course builders. The fourth trend points in a different direction. It's the trend that information wants to be free. There is a trend that you can see this throughout the online and digital world and in real life as well, just real life being a bit of a laggard to seeing this happen. Anything that can be shared at no cost eventually will be shared at no cost. And even if information is valuable, if someone can share that information in an effort to help you understand why they can support you in more depth through their products or their services, whether they're selling software like Thinkific, whether they're offering coaching services like we are in the area of course building, or anything else, information by itself is ultimately going to end up being free or at the very least very cheap. And what that means is that while the opportunity for building and selling courses is exploding, it's only for a particular kind of course. It's for the course that takes a premium approach to providing real education and not just information to really make a difference in people's lives. And because of that, if you want to be successful building and selling online courses, you still can, but it's more important than ever to follow a tried and tested process to actually build something that people will work, that will work for people and that will make a difference for them. The way to go about doing that is, we've mapped this out. We've been developing this and teaching this for years. This is our Course Builder's Blueprint. And this is literally step 1 to step 2 to step 3, all the way through to every goal that you want to achieve with online courses. What we're going to focus on, and we teach all of this through our Course Builders Laboratory Training Program. What we're going to focus on in these 5 days is the first third of this process, which is about getting to the point where you've launched your very first online course. That's what we're going to cover in the Course Builders Bootcamp. You're going to talk about and learn how to launch your first online course, which we're calling a pilot. And here's how we're going to do that. Today, we're going to talk about prerequisites for success. In other words, what do you need to have going for you? Do you have what it takes in order to build and sell online courses? And I think it's important for you to know. It's especially important because, this is a 5-day thing. If you don't have to stick around past the first day. You can, use the rest of your week to do something else. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about topic research and validation, how to know if what you want to build a course about is the right topic and will do well. On Wednesday, we're going to talk about online course marketing. This is a heavy topic that a lot of people are very interested in. On Thursday, we're going to talk about course creation and delivery, how to actually deliver that course. And on Friday, we're going to talk about engineering students' success. In other words, how to go from offering a course that just does okay to creating something that is absolutely transformative for the people who go through it. That's what we're going to do over the course of these 5 days. And if you follow this path, if you follow these steps and implement what we teach, this is really the most reliable long-term process I know for achieving these goals of impact, freedom, and wealth. And that's why we're doing this boot camp. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There are a lot of people who want to pretend that you can turn on your phone camera and just talk into it explaining something for 20 minutes and post that in the membership site and call it a course, and somehow you're going to change lives and be a millionaire. And none of that's true. There's just a lot more to it, and we want to teach you what's really involved. And this is advanced stuff. I'm going to be talking and teaching for 5 days. That's a lot of content. As I said before, it's the longest and most in-depth free training on the topic of course building that I've ever delivered and probably will ever offer again. And here's something that I want to be totally upfront with you guys. We almost didn't do it. We were very hesitant to do it because there's a real danger to giving people access to too much information that they're not going to be able to implement right away. You see, if you were to go through this training these 5 days and you implement every day, you're going to build a huge amount of momentum. That's fantastic. But if you just sort of watch the trainings, maybe miss a day or two, and just kind of file it away saying, well, I'll get back to it eventually, that will create for you a false sense of complacency, a feeling that you have the tools to do something successfully that you don't actually. And so it's very important that there be clear boundaries on what this will empower you to do and what the limits on that are. And that's why this is happening live. It's happening in real time. Every session is going to be posted as a recording for 24 hours only. So later today, in the next couple hours after I finish this session, the recording is going to be posted, and it will be up for 24 hours until the same time tomorrow when the recording of session 2 will replace it. So what that means is that you have 24 hours to watch each and every session. So it's very important to be completely present. So close your cell phone, go full screen, take notes, be fully here. And please don't, make your own recordings of this session or anything like that as well. It's an honor system. I trust everyone to be here with the greatest of integrity and the best of intentions. So let's just all be here and do it together. And by the way, I know that there are some people who are auditing the session who are not officially registered yet. If that's you, you absolutely want to make sure to register because there won't be a way of auditing the sessions past today. So I'm going to put a link into the chat for you, and you can go and register while we're on this call. I'm going to do that right now. There you go. It's in the chat in the questions box. You can click there and go and register. You're not going to want to miss that. And as much as we're going to cover in these 5 days, there's still a lot that you're going to want to be able to accomplish that, there's only so much we can get to. And so I know that many of you are going to want to continue your course building journey with our help. So I do have a special surprise that I'll tell you about later on, which is that not only are we going to be offering some course building training and technology from Mirasee and Thinkific together, we're also going to be including something that is brand new that literally nobody in the world has ever had access to. This is something that we've developed together that we're very, very excited to share with you. More on that later. But now let's dive into today's content, today's training, where we're going to talk about prerequisites for course building success. The big question is, what do you need to successfully build and sell premium courses, the kind that will actually thrive in the days ahead? I found this image online, but I used this image of a human stick figure to point to 4 different parts of our existence that have to be in place to make things work. They are your heart, your wallet, your brain, and your wristwatch. And of course, this is, these are analogies, but you'll understand in a moment. So we're going to go step by step, and we're going to start with the wallet, because the wallet is actually the simplest and most straightforward minimum requirement in order to be able to move forward. In order to be able to successfully build and sell courses that will do well and make a difference for you and for others, you need to have an income or a way of supporting yourself. I'm saying this right now up front because every so often people come to me and say, I have no money, I'm totally broke, I have tons of debt, I don't know how I'm going to pay rent in the next month, I think I want to build a course to fix that. And I tell them, building a course is not the way to fix that. Yes, course building can make you a lot of money. It's made me upwards of $10 million in the last few years. But it takes some time to get there. If you're setting out now to start building and selling courses, you can expect to make a chunk of money over the next few months, but not enough to consistently pay your rent for the next 6 months. So if you feel like you're not sure where your rent is coming from or how your basic human needs are going to be met, this is not the place, right? Go do something else. Spending a whole week on this is not going to be a good investment of your time. People know my story. This is from a blog post that I wrote sharing kind of where I was in the beginning of my journey. A bead of nervous sweat trickled down my forehead. My heart pounded. My fingers trembled. I'm telling the story of how I lost $250,000 on my last startup, and I was in this enormous amount of debt. And that's true, and I moved from there forward. I built courses, I built this business, and life is good. But I didn't start by building courses. I sold services. I got myself onto a bit of a stable foundation, and you absolutely need to do that first. So I actually want to check in with everyone on this call. Do you have the financial means to make ends meet for the next 6 months at least? Type yes or no into the questions box. Awesome. I'm seeing a lot of yeses, and that means you guys are in the right place. Anyone who's saying no, or I'm not sure, or I don't think so, I mean this with love and with respect. Go do something else. Do not stick around on this call. Definitely don't spend an hour and a half every day this week. It's just not a good use of your time. Go do something else. For everyone else, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's move forward. The second thing that you need after the wallet is the heart, and that's about your intentions. You have to be committed. You need to have a commitment to building something that makes a real difference in the lives of your students. And that doesn't have to be all that motivates you. It's okay to want freedom. It's okay to want wealth. But if wanting to make a real difference for people isn't even in the mix, you're just not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be committed to building something real and valuable, so you're better off going off and do something else. Now the second thing that you need, and this is also very important, it's about your beliefs. You need the belief that education is worth paying a premium for. And I want to dig into this. This is really important and often overlooked. The reality is that like attracts like. And if you don't believe that premium education is worth paying for, you're never going to attract people who believe that premium education is worth paying for. So I'm actually curious, guys, type into the questions box. Tell me, what have you invested, whether it's over the last year, over the last few years, what is the investment that you've made in premium education? Right? How important has this been to you really? Type into the questions box. Tell me, it can be a number, it can be, it can be an example. And I see people are saying $10,000, $1,000, thousands. Currently in grad school, so thousands in the last year. That's awesome. Great. I'm seeing some substantial numbers, and that's a very, very good thing. Not to say that just spending money magically makes money come to you. Absolutely not. But a legitimate belief that education is valuable and worth paying for is an absolutely critical foundation to building a successful business, building and selling courses. So awesome. You guys are on track so far. Check and check. Let's move on and talk about the wristwatch. By the way, you guys notice I haven't gone to the brain yet. The brain is last. You'll understand why when we get to it. But after the wallet and the heart comes the wristwatch. The wristwatch is about a commitment to getting things done, to launching your course in the relative short term, which creates a bias towards imperfect action. Let's unpack that because there's two pieces to it. The first is a commitment to getting things done in the relative short term. So let me ask you guys about timeline. Type into the questions box, tell me, is launching your course something that is a priority for you in the next 6 months? Tell me yes or no. Okay, I'm seeing a whole bunch of yeses. I'm seeing a few no's. Anyone who said no, log off of this call, go do something else. Again, 7.5 hours this week is not a good use of your time. You're only going to get this up and running if it's a significant priority to you, because the reality is that building and selling a course is a wonderful, rewarding, impactful pursuit. There's also a fair amount of work, right? It's going to take a bunch of your time. It's going to take a bunch of your energy. And if it's not a short-term priority for you, if you're not committed to doing it relatively soon, then you're never going to get around to it. So if and when it becomes a short-term priority, look me up. I promise we'll have some training option that will support you. Go do something else now. It's not a good use of 7.5 hours of your week this week. So that's the first thing. The second is what is often challenging for first-time and experienced course creators, and I'll tell you why it's challenging. Because in my experience, the people who have the most to offer as a course creator tend to have a lot of knowledge. They tend to have a lot of life experience. They tend to be very well credentialed. What that means is that you have very high standards. Type into the questions box, I'm curious, how many people on this call would describe themselves as someone who has high standards? Tell me yes or no. Yeah, exactly. It's like almost unanimous, right? We are people who have high standards. If you're going to set out to do something amazing, meant to share your life experience, your insights, your wisdom with others to make their lives better, that is almost by definition someone who has high standards. Now the reality is that if you want to put something out into the world, there's a trade-off between getting it done in the meaningful timeline that's in front of you or getting it done perfectly, and they're mutually exclusive. So you absolutely need to have a bias towards imperfect action. I do not know literally any course builder who's been successful who is not willing to move past the need for everything to be perfect and put something out into the world to get feedback. I know a lot of people who are not willing to do that, who aspire to be course builders, none who have been successful. So I'm going to ask you guys. Yeah.
I really struggled with this one because I'm totally that perfectionist. But I was really lucky. My brother came along right as I was perfecting or attempting to perfect my course, and he just gave me a deadline. Said, I want it done by this date, and then, or you're not launching it. And he had me kind of tied up because he was doing all the technology for us. So he said, this is your deadline, get it done by then. So yeah, I struggled with this one. So I hear you on this for sure. And the others too. This is great.
I love that. That's such a perfect example. And I want to light that fire under everyone here to create that urgency. I actually want a commitment from everyone who's on this call. If you're not committed, totally cool, go do something else. But I want a commitment to take imperfect action. Guys, type it in the questions box. Tell me, type it in the questions box, committed, if you're willing to move forward and do things even if it's not perfect yet. And I'm seeing, yes, people are committed. I'm seeing capital letters. I'm seeing exclamation marks. Fantastic. Awesome. Love that. Okay, you guys are awesome. Now, someone typed in the questions box a really good question. They asked, what is your definition of a course? I love that question. It's exactly where I want to go right now, because the way in which you're going to launch a course and do it successfully follows a very specific path, which I call piloting. The first course you're going to launch is called a pilot course. So let's talk about what that is. Everything I'm going to teach you over these 5 days is built around the idea of a pilot. So what's all this piloting stuff? It's based around the core idea that you're going to make a lot of assumptions. You have a lot of assumptions around the course you're going to build. You have assumptions around what people want from you, that they wanted enough to pay you, what it'll take to deliver outcomes. And of course, we've all heard that when you make assumptions, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. Assumptions lead us down a bad path. What we need to do to be successful is validate those assumptions. That's what the pilot course is all about. And the name pilot, the term pilot, actually comes from show business. If you Google pilot, you look for a definition, we're looking at that second definition, a television program made to test audience reaction with a view to the production of a series. So producing a television series is an incredibly expensive endeavor. So before a studio is going to say, yeah, sure, I'm going to give you $100 bazillion to produce this TV show, they say, well, I'll give you enough money to make one episode. Let's see if it's any good. Let's see if it looks like people are going to like it. Every TV show that you know and like started as a pilot. And it's interesting. Often you look at that first episode, that pilot episode, and often it's not that good. It's just good enough to have justified moving forward. That's what you need to do with your first course. You need to build a pilot, something you can get out the door quickly that may not be perfect but will be just good enough for you to validate that you should be moving forward. And that's why most course builders fail, because they don't do that. They try to build their magnum opus masterpiece of a course, which A, they almost never finish, B, if they finish, is not aligned with what the market actually wants, and they never get to the success they're looking for. But piloting solves all that. Piloting allows you to validate assumptions by creating, selling, and delivering a minimum viable version of your course. It's better for your students, and it's also better for your business. And there are strong behavioral psychology research foundations showing why pilots are actually easier to sell than fully formed courses. We'll talk about both of those things further on over the course of the week. But let's start with this. How is the pilot course different from the full version of your course? Two ways. The first is that typically there's less content. It's a more narrow scope. And also there's typically more support and more access to you. This is very, very powerful. A lot of people don't do this right from the beginning, and it costs them. I learned this the hard way. I was not quite as successful with my first course as Greg was with his. I spent over 2,500 hours building my first course. That is not an exaggeration. That's not a typo. An enormous amount of time. I slaved away building my magnum opus masterpiece of a course that in the end almost nobody bought. I sold less than 50 copies of it ever over its lifetime. And this is a very common story. I hear from people all the time who've spent tons of time and money and energy and effort building courses and creating ebooks and setting up membership sites and creating all this work that never sees the light of day, and if it does, nobody wants it. Now, if you can relate, that's okay. This was my experience, and I survived. I stumbled onto a better way of doing things, and I'm going to teach you that better way of doing things over these 5 days. Here's how it happened for me. The silver lining of this horrible failed course experience was that while working to build an audience and sell that course, I stumbled onto an audience building strategy that worked. And that strategy got me featured on a lot of major blogs and publications, and people started to notice what I was doing. And pretty soon, they started to ask me how I did it. I would get unsolicited emails saying, Danny, how are you doing what you're doing? Can you teach me? And it's not like I got 1 or 2 requests. I was getting 3 to 5 of these emails unsolicited per week for months straight. And, despite this very clear and evident demand, I resisted. I kept saying, well, I don't know, I don't teach this, and I don't want to build a course about this because, once bitten is twice shy. I didn't want to be burned again. But the requests kept coming. So I said, you know what, I think I'm going to do it. And I wanted to be 100% certain that I was covering my risks here. So I reached out to my audience, which was a small community at the time, and what I did was I prepared the lesson outlines and I prepared the slides, which is what kind of the minimum amount of work that I felt ready having prepared back then. And I told people they could buy in as charter students in the program, and I basically built it in real time as I delivered it. And this was not some stroke of marketing brilliance. This was just me covering my bets, right? It was so that if nobody bought, I could cut my losses and not have built a full course. But they did. People bought, and in fact, we sold out that course in 24 hours. Actually, there's a funny Thanksgiving story around that. I launched that course around, I don't remember what holiday it was. It was some holiday. I think, no, it was Thanksgiving. It was American Thanksgiving, and I'm Canadian, and I messed up the dates. And so I launched it, and it sold out in 24 hours, and a lot of people got really upset with me because they weren't in front of their computer and they missed it. So it was a whole debacle. But it went very well. And over the course of that year, we enrolled almost 1,000 students into the program. This was my first ever course. I only sold it for $137. I'd never launched something so inexpensive these days, and I don't recommend other people do either. But, this was pretty good for my very beginning. And that was my very first exposure to this idea of introduce people to the idea, enroll them, and then build it with them. But I didn't have a methodology or anything. I just, I built this course, and it seemed to go well, and that was great. But something interesting happened. After a few months of this, I realized that I had more to teach. I was getting a lot of questions from my students, and they were having great success, but they wanted to learn more things. And I felt that it was time for me to build another course, another training. But again, I was very resistant. Did I really want to build another big course? Too much to lose. So to hedge my bets, what I did was I put on a webinar, kind of like this actually. I just went on, I taught everything that I knew. I said, here's my whole process. And I said, a surprise. At the end of the webinar, I'm going to pick 8 people to mentor intensively for the rest of the year. The price at the time was $6,000. This was not for everyone. This is a small group thing. Let's try it out. And the reason I did this on a webinar was I figured, how much time could it take? It'll take me 10, 20 hours to prepare it, deliver it. It'll be fine. Well, I didn't expect anyone to sign up, but a lot of people did. 9 people applied. I turned 2 of them down because they weren't a good fit. I was left with 7. That was $42,000. A few months later, I did it again. In total, we made $79,000 from these pilot coaching experiences before I even started turning it into a course. That was pretty cool. And when the full course did launch, in just the launch, we made about $300,000. We still hadn't finished building it. We built it as we delivered it to those couple hundred students. And since then, that program, which I retired years ago, has generated over $1.5 million in revenue. Now, here's the thing that I want to really emphasize to you guys. This was, that webinar that sold $42,000 of pilot content. That was not a polished webinar. This was the title slide at the time. It looks like a ransom note. And this was like, it's not like it happened in Halloween, so it's like I did it on purpose. It was just a terrible, terrible webinar. But again, bias towards imperfect action. It worked. And that's what I want you guys to lean into, a bias towards imperfect action, even if it means you might do a webinar that looks like a ransom note. This is the exact opposite of how most people build courses. Most people spend months or even years building their thing, then they hope somebody will want to buy it, and usually nobody does. What I want you to do is adopt really the same methodology that drives success in Silicon Valley. This is essentially the lean methodology. You build something to see how it'll work, you put it out there, you measure the results, you learn from it, that informs your hypotheses, you build something better. That's what we're going to do in course building, starting with a pilot. So we've talked about 3 things so far, right? We've talked about wallet. You need to have a baseline of financial stability. We've talked about heart. You need to be committed to helping others for real. You need to believe in the real value of premium education. And we talked about wristwatch, about having to have a commitment to do it in the short term, in the next 6 months, if not sooner, and a real bias towards imperfect action. We've still not covered the most important part of what it takes to build a successful online course, which is your brain. Here's what you need in order to successfully build an online course. You need legitimate expertise in a high-value subject that is substantive and the experience or credentials that support your promise and enable you to deliver. Wow, what a mouthful, right? So let's unpack this. We're going to go piece by piece in this phrase. First thing you need is legitimate expertise. You know, there's a popular saying where if you read 5 books about a topic, you know more about it than anyone but an expert, so that makes you a de facto expert. Type it in the questions box. How many people have heard this? If you read 5 books on a topic, that makes you an expert who can teach about it. Yes or no? Okay, some people are saying they've heard it, some people haven't. It's something I hear a lot in the online courses world where people want to say, you know, yeah, pick up a few books, learn about it, then go teach. Now, here's the thing. There is some truth to that. I think it's a little oversimplified in that presentation, but if where you're at on this call right now is that if you want to teach about a topic, the first thing you need to do is go read 5 books about it, what I suggest is you get off of this call, go read those 5 books. You might learn by reading those 5 books that you need to read another 5 books, but when you reach a level of expertise where you feel like you actually have legitimate expertise and you can help someone with this area, then come back to me. Okay? You need to have legitimate expertise. You need to actually have that doesn't mean you need to be the world's leading authority. It doesn't mean you need 7 PhDs, but you need to actually know enough to be considered an expert, that if someone comes to you and says, I don't know about this, I need help, you can legitimately say, yes, I can help them. So that's the first thing, legitimate expertise. The second is experience or credentials. Not and necessarily. I'm not big on formal traditional credentials. But essentially there needs to be something in your background that allows you to make the case for being able to deliver on the outcomes that you're promising. And this should not be hard, right? If you have legitimate expertise, if you legitimately believe that you can help someone, then there must be something in your background, in your experience, your credentials that supports your ability to do that. And that's all marketing really is, right? Marketing is best defined as an accelerated version of the experiences that led you to believe in your own offer. So when we say experience or credentials, it's just what does it take for you to be able to deliver this? What is it that empowers you to do so? So we talked about legitimate expertise, we talked about experience and credentials. Next is the high value subject. It has to be substantive. So this is really important. Substantive means that it can't be taught in just 1 hour, right? If you have a topic and you're like, I think this is going to be a great course and I can just teach all of it in an hour, in 20 minutes, that might make for an amazing blog post. It might make for an amazing video. There's just not enough there for a premium course, right? You have to have enough that you can give away of real value in an hour and still have a need for people to want to pay you. So it needs to be substantive. There needs to be a depth of just what needs to be shared there. And that's why I'm comfortable doing a 5-day boot camp with you guys of free training, because I can share an enormous amount of information, and that doesn't take away from all that I still have to share with those who will join our Course Builders Laboratory. It doesn't take away from the value of and need for the courses and the coaching that we offer, right? It doesn't take away from the need for great software to support your activities that is like what is offered by Thinkific, right? There needs to be something substantive to what you're offering that is not threatened in that way. And speaking of substantive, it's got to be on a high value subject. You know, we talked about this a little bit at the start of the session where information is aspiring to be free. And so if you can't build something that is high value to the customer, you're just doomed out of the gate. We talked about this, but now I want to dig a little bit deeper into this because something I've found is a recurring pattern, a recurring trend with people who set into the world of online courses is they tend to underprice. they tend to be uncomfortable with the idea of spending any kind of effort asking people to pay a meaningful amount of money. You know, they want to build a course and sell it for $27, $57. I can tell you for sure, if you're a big company, if you have 100,000 people who follow your work, you can make that math work. Excuse me. You know what? My throat is going a little dry. I have to get a glass of water. Greg, do you want to speak to this a little bit? I'll be right back.
Yeah, no, and I love this one. Now I'm one of those people who made this mistake. So it's funny because so many of the mistakes that or things that Danny's sharing here really resonate with me. My first course I put out at $29. So I was kind of cringing when I saw this, and when he was sharing his first one at $137 and saying he wouldn't launch another one at that point. But you're right in that you really, the reason why when I first put mine out at $29, it worked as a starting point, but I really did as a test case. The benefit I had is that I already had thousands of visitors cycling through my blog looking to buy courses every day, and I was in a unique market where they were cycling through and purchasing constantly. So there was a constant recycling of clients, and that's because I was teaching in a subject called the LSAT, where you have a new batch of students coming in every year. But most of us aren't like that. We don't have an audience, a huge audience, or an audience that's constantly recycling every few months. So having high value is something that's required to make that more sustainable. And this is a piece, and I don't know if this is something you usually speak to, but Danny, but I find you had a quote earlier there, I think it was from Nelson Mandela, about education being the most powerful weapon to create positive change. And I would tie to that, and it's something we talk about a lot here at Thinkific, is that the business is the most powerful vehicle for positive change in the world. And if you don't value your educational tools highly enough, you're not creating a sustainable business, and then you can't scale and reach more people and have that impact that you want. So I love, for me, one of the reasons why I'll charge more for a course is I know that it allows me to reach more people. And be able to scale and create a better product. And I've heard time and again from clients of ours that they've started by making the mistake with some free, nothing but free, or really low value products or low price products, and then once they actually start building a business around it and they realize they can charge more for it, they actually create higher quality products. They get better feedback from students. Their students are happier. The people they work with are happier. Even though they're paying more, they're happier because they're inevitably getting a better quality product. Because if you can charge more for it, you'll end up creating a higher value product.